Welcome to the Hot Lava Podcast, special Thursday, off day edition. Kevin Acee, sports writer, beat writer for the Padres, for the Union-Tribune. I've only done that intro like 500 times, and I couldn't remember who I am. Padres beat writer. There's Ryan Finley, sports editor of the Union-Tribune. I'm in Minneapolis, and the Padres just lost what has been a rare series recently. I think there's some stuff to talk about. Ryan, where would you like to start?
Yeah, let's start with starting pitching. Start with the starters. They continue to be a little bit of a concern, I think, against the Seattle Mariners. Padres lose 2 of 3 there. The long ball kills them yet again. I had thought maybe that the way they had pitched against the Dodgers last weekend, that maybe they had turned the corner or gotten past some of these early game struggles. But man, more questions than answers, I think, as we start to think of the Padres lining up their rotation for the playoffs.
And that's right. And there you go. You put those two things together. More questions than answers. And talking about the playoffs, yes. I think it's a big concern. I do. If you want to go all the way to the optimistic side, and I know a guy who I talk to every day during the baseball season who goes automatically all the way to the optimistic side, you can say, man, those are some big names. And those are some guys that you think could give you a good outing every time you go out, and that's Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish, and of course Nick Pivetta, who does basically do that, give you a good outing every time you go out. And Michael King's coming back, and you know what? This thing could work out really well. Okay, yes, it could, but we've been waiting all year for Dylan Cease to be consistent in any form or fashion. And the only thing he's been consistently is inconsistent. And you could, and I'm not going to go there, but you could say the only thing he's been consistent at is being not very good. And Yu Darvish, who up and down, and I'll give it to him that it's a pitch or two here or there, but that's what it takes to ruin an outing. And Michael King hasn't come back yet. It seems I've been watching him, been talking to people. He'll come back, but he hasn't, and there's not a whole lot of ramp up to the postseason. So where are you at, Padres? Like I don't know how you like. I'll be fascinated. How do they make the bullpen work once they get to the playoffs? And so that's where I'll come down, Ryan. Is I'm not as concerned as I would be if you didn't have the bullpen they have, because that's how you're going to get through and win in the postseason anyway. And I'm sure we'll get into this, if you look at this schedule, the Padres are making the postseason. Like if they don't, we are talking about something way bigger.
Yeah, to me, I think it's kind of twofold. Number one, there are some concerns with the starting pitching, and you're right, Kevin. If this is a short series, most of these guys who we have questions about might not even be pitching, right? And they can go their bullpen early. But going to the bullpen early is not how you play a regular season week of baseball or 2 weeks of baseball. At some point, I will give Mike Schilt credit. Since the day he showed up, he manages every game like it's the World Series. But the reality is, over the course of a long season, you can't be going to the bullpen in the 4th inning every night. And if Yu Darvish and if Dylan Cease keep giving up home runs, at some point, rather than try to go to the bullpen in the 4th inning, they're going to sit there and they're going to wear it. And to me, that's a problem. Darvish said something to you yesterday that I thought for him was telling, which was, I hate to keep saying this, but that is one pitch that cost me. When I'm good, even if you make a mistake, they would foul it off. But in an instance like today, I make that one mistake and they get all of it. And he's talking about the home run that Gino Suarez hit. That was just a shot. I mean, the Mariners went upper tank at home a couple of times in this series against the Padres. To me, that's a big concern. It's a big concern. You need to get better performance from guys like Darvish and Cease. And then when Michael King comes back, it's how good can he be? I don't know.
Yep. Mike Schilt, who, if those of you who don't follow along, is the gentleman I was talking about who goes big time positive on everything. Yesterday, I speak Mike Schilt, so I can tell you when something is more than what he's saying. And it's obvious. It basically is what you just said, Ryan. But for Mike Schilt, it was pretty big because he just doesn't allow very much, right? He just doesn't. And yesterday he goes, there will come a time where it's okay to go to our bullpen early. And then he stopped himself from saying, but now isn't that time? And damn it. And he said he turned something that was not a negative, but was like a imperative into a positive. He said, you're talking about Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish. Guys, we expect to go longer. And he said it in a way and have all the confidence to go longer. And he said it in this way that's like, yay, rah, rah. What he meant was, we're talking about Yu Darvish and Dylan Cease right now. These guys have got to go longer.
Right. They have to. And again, this is not even knowing what they're going to get out of Michael King. I think it's fair to say right now that, Michael King's going to throw another bullpen in Minnesota this weekend. The hope is to get him back here fairly soon. But I mean, how many starts does he have to make before you're comfortable pitching him in the postseason? To me, that becomes a big question too.
Well, it's you are comfortable pitching him in the postseason. I know what you mean, but but this is the way that you opened up a door here for, like, you're comfortable pitching him in the postseason if he's never pitched in a major league game. You just might get one inning out of him, but you're comfortable pitching him after 3 starts. Because then you just know, okay, we're going to go and all the scenarios they'll have 7 scenarios, but we're going to count on Michael to give us 4 shutout. That's our best case scenario tonight, not count on, but that's our best case. 4 shutout. Okay, good. Now we've mapped out the rest of the game. That's where, or hey, if it's 6 starts or 5 starts, whatever it is, and he's up to 6 innings, then you're hoping that you're getting the real Michael King. But that, at this point, with this short lead up, I think 5 innings of Michael King, 5 strong innings of Michael King. Look, if the Padres lineup can be what it has been a fair amount, the Dodgers won last year with 5 innings from their starters because they had a good bullpen. Now they scored. That helped Dave Roberts manage this thing. It wasn't always having to rely on those 4 or 5 high leverage guys. You can get away with when you got a 5-run lead in the 5th. All right, you know what? I'm going to get me an inning from Wandy Peralta if that's the lane, or David Morgan if that's the lane, right? But yeah, these are really, really, really big questions for a playoff team.
Right. There's good news and bad news as the Padres enter this series against the Twins. Let's start with the bad. The Dodgers lead in the National League West is up to 2 games. Really, it's 2.5 games if you count the fact that the Dodgers hold the tiebreaker with the Padres here by virtue of winning the season series. The good news is, and Kevin, I'd like to get into this, the Padres are still in a pretty good spot. They have a 99.5% chance of making the playoffs, according to FanGraphs, in part because of who they play coming up next. The Padres have the easiest record in baseball, easiest schedule remaining in baseball this season. They get to play the Twins, the Orioles, the Rockies again, and the White Sox at some point here in the next 3 weeks or so. That's huge because the Padres crush bad teams.
And I say it all the time. Now, they've taken it to the extreme since they're the only team in playoff position to have a losing record, and I believe it's 9 games under 500, against other winning teams. So the Padres have not done well against other teams like them, by and large. They've done better lately, by the way. They have, and this was a problem in the past, when they were a pretty good team. 2023, if they were this team in 2023, they would have made the playoffs by 15 games. The Diamondbacks wouldn't have had that awesome run to the World Series because they wouldn't have made it. But the Padres have the best record in baseball against teams with losing records. They destroy them. So, you got the Twins and I think the Orioles, who at this moment, they've got Twins and Orioles back-to-back. That's the next 6 games. At this moment, they're tied for, I believe, the 6th worst record in baseball. So, and then later you've got the 2 worst, and you've got 7 against the Rockies, who are the worst. They are playing better, but let's not get into semantics when we're talking about the team with the worst record. So you get 4 of them at home, not 3, and 3 of them at the crazy place. Come on. This will be epic failure if they weren't to make the playoffs, which is why we're talking with such assuredness. And I promise you that the Padres are, because that's just what you do, and it's what every team right now is doing that is in playoff position. They're looking ahead to the playoffs. And all these questions we're talking about, they're talking about.
Right. The Padres have played 12 of their last 19 games against teams that, if the season ended today, would make the playoffs. Padres now played 9 in a row against teams with losing records. 18 or 19 of their final 28 against teams with losing records.
Ryan, let's talk about that. I want to make sure we talk about it briefly. 12 of the 19, right? They won the series against the Red Sox. Didn't face Garrett Crochet, faced 2 other good pitchers. They won a series against the Dodgers, right? I think you go back a little further. They swept the Mets. There's another winning team in there besides the Mariners, who they just lost to. But recently, they've done better, at least at home, especially against teams that are in playoff position. So it's not as dire as maybe we made it sound. Also, what was the stat I had today, Ryan? As I assume you just read the newsletter. 26 of the 60-something games that they've played, almost half of the games they've played against teams with winning records were started by a Padres pitcher who will not start games for them in the playoffs. Now, I didn't get into how many of those games that they won against winning teams were not started by their best starters, right? But the point being, regular season, playoffs, come on. To get too granular comparing regular season playoffs gets a little silly.
Yep. And you know what? And again, you want to talk granular here. September, I think, not only are you playing bad teams in the month, not only are you playing bad teams, you're playing them in the month of September, which is when a lot of these bad teams are already thinking about next year, right? You look at the Diamondbacks this week, called up some randos. This is where if this were 2016, Will Myers would be playing third base for the Padres, right? That's what they're looking at right here. Not only is it bad teams, but it's bad teams that aren't really focused on winning baseball games in the final month of the season, more about looking ahead. If they can't take advantage of that, then they don't deserve to make the playoffs, frankly.
Right. And guaranteed that I'll hear it one time. I've already heard it, actually, not as any preemptively, just because it's a reality, but you should be embarrassed to say it if you lose to one of these teams, that, these guys are really trying hard. This is their playoffs. And I covered the Padres in this position, and it was a big deal. They would take a big morale boost, at least for a few minutes, by beating the Dodgers in September, right? Or beating the Red Sox on their way to the whatever, that would be not as if they did those things. But that would be big. But yeah, Brian, you nailed it. There just is no reason the Padres don't finish this season. And what would that be? Is it 28? It would be 15-13 for them to get to 90 wins. I mean, right. 15-13 against this schedule. Come on.
Right. Book clear October, the first week of October, at least from your schedule, Kevin. I think we'll be working with the Padres in the playoffs right about then.
If they don't make the playoffs, I'll be working because there's heads that are going to roll. So, but anyway, we don't need to worry about that.
That's a great point. I'd like to talk about Luis Arraez. This has been a topic of conversation on Twitter, and I know what we think of that. But, also among baseball folks here in the last couple of weeks.
Don't group me with I love Twitter, man. You don't group me with you there, Ryan.
Luis Arraez, he's been struggling. He got yesterday off. Mike Schilt was very quick to say, this is just a day off. Don't read anything into it. It's just a day off. In fact, Luis Arraez ended up pinch hitting in the 9th inning of a 1-run loss. You know what? He's struggling, though. 190 in his last 16 games. He's 2 for 23. When Fernando Tatis reaches base in front of him, which is sort of an amazing stat. He's trying to bunt a lot. There's a lot of soft fly balls to left field. This is not the Luis Arraez who I think single-handedly kickstarted the Padres offense when he showed up here last May.
Just a tick off, and when you're not a guy who, right, he's hard to analyze, right? You're not looking at his swing and miss. You're not looking at his contact rate. You're not looking at his exit velocity. You're not looking at his launch angle. Like this is a guy who puts the ball in play and enough hits fall that he hits 300, right? Mm-hmm. And he's not, and he doesn't, because he puts the ball in play constantly. The on-base percentage isn't high enough to justify 280 batting average, because a 280 batting average, you'd be like, oh, Fernando Tatis Jr. is hitting 280. That means that Fernando Tatis Jr. is getting on base at a 340 clip, and he's slugging at a 400 clip, and like everything's great, right? I mean, for the most part, right? Like, it's good. That's actually not good for Tatis. We'd be lamenting Tatis, but anyway, you get my point. And so, in that sense, talking about moving Luis Arraez out of the number 2 spot where he's been far and away their most frequent batter in the number 2 spot, 110 starts there, is totally understandable. I always have to say that and it's questions that have been asked to Mike Schilt it's all valid. And then I have to operate in reality, and I just don't. Mike Schilt is not going to move him down. Now, had to ask Mike because you don't know, right? Like, but internally they've talked about it. Internally they've talked probably more about moving Xander Bogaerts down and Laureano up into the 5. But there's even reluctance to do that. So I don't know where would you like to go with that conversation? Because there are things to talk about. But like, what are your thoughts? Like when you think, whoa, okay, yeah, Arraez isn't doing good in that spot. What do? Is it just simple as Laureano's up there?
I don't know. I'm not sure if what Ramon Laureano is doing is sustainable. There's enough baseball on his resume to know that this probably isn't who he is. Just the same way a bad 30 at bat stretch for Luis Arraez probably isn't who he is. What I'm looking at, Kevin, is I'm looking at Gavin Sheets crushing the baseball. And I'm looking at Luis Arraez flying out to left. And I'm wondering if a world exists when Jackson Merrill returns from the injured list, where maybe Luis Arraez isn't starting at all. Does that mean that you're putting Ryan O'Hearn at first, Jake Cronenworth at second? And then Sheets DHs? I mean, I would take it that far. I still think that the Padres' best team probably has Luis Arraez hitting at the top of the order, but the Padres' hottest team right now has to have Gavin Sheets in the lineup, I think.
I absolutely agree, and I think you could maybe find more days like that. Though Mike got him his his off day yesterday, so like it would be like if he'd saved his off day for Luis for Monday, right? Be like, yeah, we'll just see how this plays out. We'll go day to day with this. But yeah, that to me is because you have to have Jackson Merrill in there defensively. What Jackson Merrill could do offensively. And what he has looked better, he's looked better. But still you go, oh, wow, you mean what a godsend that Jackson Merrill got hurt there for a while. We saw that Gavin Sheets still has it. And not only does he still have it, he's like one of our hottest hitters, right? That's what the Padres are going. They're going, oh, man, this is too much of a good thing, right? Hey, maybe Xander Bogaerts, that foot thing's not going to work out, and we'll figure out a way there. But that doesn't really help him because that's an infielder, and you don't have the whole, DH thing. But anyway, that's maybe you move Arraez to second then. I don't know. But, like, yeah, it's the proverbial good problem to have, except is it really when you've got Luis Arraez underperforming?
Right.
But I'm going to ask you this question. This is what crystallized it for me. It did for a few other people I talked to, but those people may have been more prone to keep Arraez where he was anyway. If I said to you, Ryan, someone on the Padres needs to get 3 hits tomorrow, you have to decide who. If you don't, you die. If they don't, you die.
Yep.
Who's the guy you're picking that you think is going to give you the best shot to get 3 hits tomorrow?
It's Luis Arraez, because I know Luis Arraez isn't going to walk, because I know that they're going to pitch to Luis Arraez. They're not going to pitch around Luis Arraez. I mean, I'm being a little glib here, but yeah, I agree with you completely. If it's 3 singles or else you die, sure.
And that's a reluctance to move him down to a certain extent. But your explanation of how you got there is also a reason to move him down.
Right. I know he's not going to hit a warning track fly ball. Here to me is maybe the solution as to who should hit second, but he's been struggling too. I look at Jackson Merrill and I go, man, that's a 2-hitter.
Yep.
Man, that's a 2-hitter to me. Good bat to ball skills, good power.
Not going
allow
to
you
double play you.
Right. Not it still allows you to go righty, lefty, righty to start the game. But man, Jackson Merrill's been slumping just as much as Luis Ariz. I don't think that you can justify, say, Saturday or Friday, whenever Jackson Merrill comes off the IL, Saturday. You can't probably take him off the IL and put him second in your order and call that an upgrade, because I'm not sure it would be.
Where I agree with you, I agree with why you can't do it as well. So I'm all around you there. I want to bring this up before we move on. We are dealing with human beings. Had Ramon Laureano come in and gone 4 for 4 yesterday, Mike Schilt might have had some coverage to then talk to a couple of his veteran players about, you know what, we're going to do this again and see where it goes. Okay.
Yeah, had they won yesterday? Maybe.
And don't
also
roll your eyes at me, because yes, a manager has got to make tough calls and have tough conversations. But you're talking about moving Luis Ariz down to like 7th. When Luis Ariz has not hit there since like 2019. And Luis Ariz is still batting 280. And Luis Ariz is a spark plug for this team. And also you're talking about moving Ramon Laureano up to 2nd. And he grounds into double plays and he strikes out. And he's suddenly going to feel the pressure. He's going to know that he was put up there to do that. Now, Ramon Laureano's done a great job of responding to the pressure of being a trade deadline acquisition who needs to perform, because that's what he's brought here to do. So I'm not saying he wouldn't, but like Mike Schilt has to deal in reality of, I'm dealing with human beings here. Is Ramon Laureano going to be what I need him to be in the 2, right? And the rest of us are going, well, maybe try it for 3 games. Let's see, because it can't be worse than it is now. And then Mike Schilt would probably say, can't it? Because we've won 8 of our last 10 series, and we're scoring almost 5 runs a game. So, like, really? Because, and I'm about to write a story right now about the bottom of the order. And yes, of course, Ramon Laureano, it makes you want to get him more at bats. Oh, but do you really want to break up the 6, 7, 8, 9 that's happening right now? Like, it's a valid. I'm not dismissing this. Like, sometimes we used to earlier in the year, people getting into the weeds about, should it be Tyler Wade, right? Or one of my favorite guys, Brandon Lockwood, in left field, or who should be batting here. And it's like, are we really talking about this over the big 4, big 5, whatever, going to hit? Are we really? That's not this. This is a valid conversation, but it's not as clear cut as everyone would like every single conversation in this world to be. That it's black and white and my way's the right way and it's wrong. And look, he's hitting 190 in his last 16 games and he shouldn't be there. Okay, it's a career worst stretch. Okay, it's gives you cover, gives you ammunition for your conversation, but it's just not that cut and dry.
It's not. Kevin, in a related note, it's been 30 podcasts since I've asked you about Eggy Rosario, so that's probably good, right?
That was
funny. To me, this is, and I guess this is kind of the overarching question, and maybe I'm overthinking baseball here, Kevin, but to me, Mike Schilt has a really tough task here. You always want to get better. Of course, the name of competitive sports is getting better. But you also need to understand that by and large, this formula has worked, and it's worked over 6 months. It has. Luis Ariz, his numbers have gone up and down a little bit. We can say on a whole, he's done a pretty good job this year. So do you run the risk of upsetting what has been working by and large all year long in the favor of getting better short term? Maybe you do. Maybe it unlocks something and this becomes the best team in baseball. Maybe it blows up in your face. I don't know.
And do you want to do that in September?
Right.
Because Laureano comes up and goes 1 for 21, and then he's down in the 7, and he's slumping, and he's feeling bad. And now the 7, 8, 9 aren't doing anything. It's just not. Now, I'm not trying to convince anybody. I'm really not. I'm asking to come away with a little understanding that it's just not. You might not be right. Mike Schilt might not be right, but he is the guy who managed them to 93 wins last year and has them on pace for over 90 this year. So he might be.
Right. My own opinion, Kevin, I'm just a guy who watches on TV and talks to you on this podcast. But I would consider sitting Luis Arraez before I would consider dropping Luis Arraez in the order.
On a regular, I got you, on a regular basis.
It allows you to play Ryan O'Hearn, allows you to play Gavin Sheets, gives you a little bit more slug. To me, moving him down is a half measure, I think. You know, if you move him down to 7, okay, well, what's he going to show you hitting 7th? Like, I would almost give him a break and see how he physically does, how he emotionally does, before I would say, hey, man, you're now going to hit 7th. I know you have 4 batting titles or whatever it is, 3 batting titles, but you're a 7 hitter now. Like, I almost wouldn't even risk doing that. I'd either sit him or I'd keep him where he is.
Yeah. I don't think you can sit him all the time. It can be strategic. Do you start sitting him against lefties? It's a whole nother body of to think about here. A whole other, yeah. You got some of the same issues there, but yes, I mentioned it today. I don't know where to go with it, but I mentioned it today. Gavin Sheets is playing too well to sit. And we got a guy coming back in a couple days who's not going to sit in Jackson Merrill. So what are you doing? So absolutely, Ryan, like you're on it. I want to point out something just for fun, just to sort of confuse the situation and be a jerk. You know, there's one guy hitting over 300, and Luis Arraez is another 16-game hitting streak, like he just had, by the way, from winning another batting title. As much as we are, you know, crapping on him here, okay? So, like, now look, that doesn't change any of the other stuff about that Luis doesn't bring or has not brought this year, but is like, is this guy really the worst player on the team? Like it's being talked about? I just don't. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. And I think it's worth noting, Kevin, if I'm doing a Padres 2026 starting lineup just on the back of this notepad here, I think Gavin Sheets is probably their starting first baseman next year. That's just my opinion. Like to me, at least, I don't think Luis Arraez is back next year, one way or another. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is a massive problem necessarily. This is a problem that probably will resolve itself. Either he gets better, he gets benched, and regardless of what happens, he leaves at the end of the year.
Yep.
That's just me. Real quick, we're going to go over starting pitching. There's not a lot of it that we know at the moment. Nestor Cortez against Zebby Matthews. Zebby, Zebby Matthews, Friday night at 5:10 p.m. our time. Saturday is Nick Pivetta versus a Twins pitcher TBA. Sunday right now is Padres TBA at Twins TBA, but we're guessing here. Who do we think is pitching Sunday for the Padres, Kevin?
Randy Vasquez.
Okay.
Yeah. The Twins, by the way, have a better offense on the whole, or have for, I don't even know who's playing for the Twins anymore. Okay. But the Twins have better offensive numbers. Their pitching is abysmal.
Yeah. It's been really bad. Even a year or two ago, I mean, they've had some guys, just a really, really down year from them. Kevin, I put you on the spot at the end of every episode, and we're going to go a little out of left field today. Twins bench coach, you know him.
Yes.
Jace Tingler. Tell me a Jace Tingler story.
Oh boy, man, that one is really putting me on the spot. Jace Tingler's like a really good guy, and I believe that he probably has learned a lot and is a really good coach. Was completely overmatched and really shouldn't have been put in that position that he was put in. I got to know Jace a lot because I came to his hometown in Missouri and spent some time with him. And then the pandemic hit, and we didn't get to know Jace as well as we could have. And so, as far as with the team, and certainly there's some bad stories. I'm just not going to tell. It was a really ugly 2021 year. I'm not going to tell. But Jace Tingler could have been a legend here. Can I go to his childhood?
Please.
So Jace Tingler's mom's a legendary high school basketball coach, hardcore woman. And Missouri, yes. And Jace Tingler's coach, who, by the way, is like a billionaire, this travel ball team, he started some cleaning supply company that we've all seen. But there's this travel team. Albert Pujols is on it. A couple other guys who made the major leagues. Jace Tingler. Jace Tingler's a left-handed hitting catcher and shortstop. That's how good he was. They're left-handed throwing as well. But they're like 9 or 10 or 11 years old, and his coach is hardcore, and they get in a benches clearing incident. I don't know if I want to call it a brawl, but Jace is like involved in this. He thinks that they're on their way home after the game, and he thinks his mom's going to be mad at him for being involved in this. And she says, "You better get out of the dugout quicker next time."
Yeah.
That's who
good.
Jace Tingler is, and he brought that intensity, and that's why AJ Preller wanted him to be the manager of this team.
Sure.
Was one of the reasons. Okay, I happen to love Jace Tingler, like he's a good man and like a good baseball dude. He was not a good manager. He just was not. He was not supposed to be a manager at that point.
Right. He was put in kind of an impossible situation.
Yeah.
It's funny. I think of he and Andy Green similarly, even though they're very different guys, obviously very different backgrounds. But both of those guys, like, I'd love to see Andy Green given a shot to manage again, because there's a lot to like there. He was nobody. Walter Alston couldn't have managed those Padre teams to a winning record.
Well, two things on that. Andy Green is a really good manager who had no shot.
Right.
The best thing, I know Dave Roberts, and hey, good for Dave Roberts, because the best guys hold the grudges, right? Dave Roberts insulted, and probably should have been, that he didn't get an interview and wasn't the guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best thing never happened to Dave Roberts.
Right.
Because like you said, Casey Stengel, Earl Weaver, Tony La Russa were not managing that period of Padres baseball and turning, that team into a winner, right? We never heard of those guys, right? Like most people don't know who Andy Green is outside of San Diego because he managed that team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Dave Roberts, had he managed the Padres, he'd be the first base coach for some random team. Maybe he'd be the bench coach of the Minnesota Twins, the way Jace Tingler is now.
Best situation to go into where it's heavily analytics. The front office has a much bigger say than in terms of like the game operation than AJ Preller takes. Now AJ Preller is going to wear you out talking about it if you're the manager, but he's not going to tell you what to do. And then Dave Roberts got to grow into the guy that he is now. While making the playoffs every year because they spend all this money. And I'm not making any judgment about what kind of manager Dave Roberts is. He's a good manager, obviously, based on results. But luckiest guy in the world to not get the Padres job in 2016.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We see that it's college football season starts really this weekend too. Kevin, certain teams have great rosters. It's easy to look smart as a coach when you've got all the best players. I would argue that Dave Roberts, for most of the time he's been with the Dodgers, has had all the best players. And Andy Green had Matt Kemp for a while.
I'm not saying managers don't matter.
Right.
At all. There's a huge gap between managers don't matter and, the best managers have the best players.
Right. No, you're right. You can be really good at playing the X's and O's, the chess game of baseball, but if you don't have a shutdown reliever to bring in the game, you don't look smart. You don't.
What other job really, right? Like you're running a company, your decision is either right or wrong.
Right.
A baseball manager can make the right decision about the pitcher to bring in, the hitter to bring in, the lineup to put out there, and his team could lose 7-0.
Right. You're right.
Like that, that's just we don't know. The Manager of the Year award is the dumbest award because we don't know. That's not to say guys don't deserve it or the right guys don't get it a lot of the time, but we don't have any idea from organization to organization what a manager's responsibilities are actually. And then just the conversation we just had, which we went off on a real tangent, didn't we? Or didn't I?
Quick, who's the National League Manager of the Year right now?
Oh, Pat Murphy. I mean, and I say that going, what the hell do I know? But like, are you kidding me? Like, give it to Pat Murphy until that team finishes last. Like, that's just incredible. What's happening there has to be Pat Murphy.
I'd say Tito Francona probably second or third. They're doing okay. Cincinnati.
Yes. Yep, they're doing great. Now, whoever's going to get some votes, Mike Schilt will get like a couple second, third, fourth place votes. Dave Roberts will too because of how good they're doing. But like, how do any of us know? But like, I would go Pat Murphy after all this thing where I slam it and I go, we don't know. I just really emphatically said Pat Murphy. But look at that roster.
Who scares you on their roster?
Here's a guy who was slamming his team in the middle of the year, and it worked. I'm going to go ahead and say Pat Murphy's doing some good stuff over there.
And this is where I will say to you, if Pat Murphy got the job instead of Jace Tingler, Pat Murphy would be probably like back coaching in college. But he waited, bided his time, went with Craig Counsell to Milwaukee.
Yep.
Inherited a good club and is winning. Yep.
Took over because he was the guy to take over. Now, look, I love Pat Murphy, and I think, a lot of people know that he's a really good baseball man, and gosh, I sure appreciate his old school mentality, and all that. And I think this probably is the right team for him, right? Mm-hmm. The right veterans, and then the kind of young roster that you can pull a guy for not running. You can say they're playing, badly, and it's, like. Was it Dave Roberts the other day said something about Teoscar Hernandez that actually, now compared to the guy I cover, he was ripping the crap out of Teoscar Hernandez, Dave Roberts was. But like, it was kind of innocuous, like he's got to be better out there right after he screwed up in right field again. And I heard some commentators, former players, saying you got to show Teoscar Hernandez more respect. Like, what the heck? Like... What? Like, the fans aren't owed a little honesty? Like, a little explanation of, hey, we're going to... Now, look, Dave Roberts also said he's trying out there. He's working on it. Like, he didn't say the guy's a piece of, whatever, and that, he's the worst thing ever. But, like, man, but I'm telling you, that's the reality. That's why Mike Schilt doesn't say anything. Like, that's the reality of some of today's ball player that got to be careful what you say, man. And it's like, dang, that's just, but Pat Murphy, he's got the right team to be able to say some of those things.
Absolutely. Padres Twins 3-game series starting Friday night in Minneapolis. A reminder, Minneapolis is on Central Time. So 5:00 game. Starting here on Friday. Kevin, thank you. This was good. We went off on a little bit of a tangent, and I know we went long. So thank you for your time today, Padres Twins. And then, Kevin, we will talk. We will not broadcast on Monday ahead of their series against the Orioles. We will talk to you this time next week. That'll do it for this episode of the Hot Lava Podcast. For Kevin Acee, I'm Ryan Finley. We'll see you next time.